The car smelled of old leather and my brother's cheap cologne, but it was the silence that hit me hardest. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as the weight of what I'd just done sank in. I'd offered to drive Ethan home, my brother's best friend, not knowing it would unravel my entire world. It was late August in suburban Ohio, the kind of sticky night where the air clings to your skin like a secret you can't shake. I was 23, fresh out of college, crashing in my parents' place while I figured out what the hell to do with my English degree. My brother, Jake, was 21, still living at home, still dragging his friends through our house like it was a frat. Ethan was one of them, tall, lean, with messy blonde hair and eyes that seemed to see right through you. I'd known him since high school, but we'd never been close. He was Jake's friend, not mine. Until tonight. "Yo, Caleb, you mind dropping Ethan off?" Jake had called from the living room, sprawled on the couch with a beer. His car's busted, and I'm too buzzed to drive. I should have said no. I had a stack of job applications waiting on my desk, a life I was supposed to be building. But Ethan was already standing in the doorway, his hands shoved in his pockets, that half-smile tugging at his lips. "I owe you one, man," he said, his voice low, almost shy. Something about it made my stomach twist, and not in a bad way. That was the first warning I ignored. The drive started innocently enough. Ethan lived about 20 minutes away, in a rundown apartment complex on the edge of town. The radio hummed some overplayed pop song, and I kept my eyes on the road, trying not to notice how the streetlights caught the sharp angles of his face. He was quiet first, slouched in the passenger seat, one knee bouncing like he was nervous. I figured he was just tired. It was past midnight, after all. "So," he said finally, breaking the silence, "you sticking around here for good? Or you got some big city dreams?" I laughed, more out of nerves than humor. "Big city dreams? Nah, I'm just trying to survive. You know how it is." He turned his head, and I could feel his eyes on me. "Yeah, I know how it is." There was something in his tone, something heavy, like he was saying more than the words let on. I glanced at him just for a second and saw it. The way his lips parted slightly, the way his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. My chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing, just the late hour messing with my head. But the air in the car felt different now, charged like the moment before a storm breaks. We were halfway to his place when he spoke again. "You ever feel like you're hiding something from everyone? Like, even the people closest to you?" I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" He shifted in his seat, leaning closer. "I don't know. Like there's this part of you that you keep locked up because you're scared of what'll happen if you let out." My hands tightened on the wheel. I knew exactly what he meant, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Not to him, not to myself. Growing up in our small town, I'd learned early to keep certain thoughts buried. You didn't talk about feelings like that. Not if you wanted to fit in. Not if you wanted your family to look at you the same way. But Ethan's words were like a key turning in a lock I'd spent years trying to ignore. "Maybe," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But some things are better left alone, right?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over and turned off the radio, plunging us in his silence. The only sound was the hum of the engine and my own pulse pounding in my ears. "What if they're not?" he said finally. "What if keeping it in is what's killing you?" I didn't know how to respond. My mouth went dry, and I kept my eyes glued to the road, afraid to look at him. Afraid of what I'd see. Afraid of what I'd feel. We were at a stoplight now, the red glow bleeding into the car, painting his face in shades of crimson. He was staring at me, and I could feel the weight of it, like he was daring me to say something, to do something. "Caleb," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading, "you ever think about what you really want? Not what everyone else expects, but what you want." The light turned green, but I didn't move. My hands were shaking, and my heart felt like it was about to explode. I turned to him, and for the first time, I really looked at him, not as my brother's friend, not as the guy I'd known for years, but as Ethan. His eyes were wide, searching, and there was something raw in them, something that mirrored the ache I'd been carrying for as long as I could remember. "I don't know," I said, my voice cracking. I don't know what I want. But that was a lie. I knew exactly what I wanted, and it terrified me. Because what I wanted was sitting right next to me, close enough to touch, close enough to ruin everything. The light flickered, and a car behind us honked, snapping me out of it. I hit the gas, my mind racing as fast as the engine. Ethan didn't say anything else, but the silence between us was louder than any words. We were getting closer to his apartment, and I felt like I was running out of time. For what? I wasn't sure. But the thought of dropping him off, of driving back to my safe, predictable life, made my chest ache. When we pulled into the parking lot of his complex, I cut the engine, but didn't move. Neither did he. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying, and I could feel it pressing down on me, heavy and inescapable. "Thanks for the ride," Ethan said, but he didn't reach for the door. He was looking at me again, his eyes softer now, almost vulnerable. "You didn't have to do this." "Yeah, I did," I said, not sure if I was talking about the ride or something else entirely. He smiled, just a little, and it was like a spark in the dark. "You're a good guy, Caleb. You know that, right?" I didn't feel like a good guy. I felt like a coward, sitting there with my hands clenched in my lap, too scared to say what I was thinking, too scared to move. But then Ethan did something I didn't expect. He reached over, his hand brushing mine, and my whole body froze. His touch was light, tentative, but it sent a jolt through me like I'd been shocked. "Ethan," I started, but my voice caught in my throat. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "Tell me I'm not crazy," he whispered. "Tell me you feel it too." I wanted to say he was wrong, that he was imagining things, that this was a mistake. But I couldn't, because he wasn't crazy, and I did feel it, every terrifying, exhilarating second of it. And in that moment, with his hand on mine and his eyes searching my face, I made a choice. I leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was reckless, electric, like diving into a pool without checking the depth. Ethan's lips were soft but urgent, and for a moment, nothing else existed. No car, no Ohio suburb, no weight of a world that wouldn't understand. But then reality crashed in, and I pulled back, my breath ragged, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Caleb," Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper, his hand still on mine. His eyes were wide, searching, like he was waiting for me to run or to stay. I didn't know which I'd choose. "I shouldn't have done that," I said, my words tumbling out too fast. This is a mistake." But even as I said it, my body screamed the opposite. My skin was buzzing where his hand touched mine, and I couldn't look away from him. Ethan didn't flinch. "Is it?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tremor in his fingers. Because it didn't feel like a mistake to me. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that this couldn't happen. Not here, not now, not with my brother's best friend. But the truth was, I've been fighting this feeling for years, since high school, when I'd catch myself staring at guys in the locker room and force my eyes away, ashamed. I'd buried it under girlfriends, football games, and late-night beers with Jake and his crew. But Ethan was different. He'd always been different. "We can't," I said, but it sounded weak, like I was trying to convince myself more than him. "Jake would kill me. My parents, they'd never get it." Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a second, I thought he'd pull away, get out of the car, and leave me to drown in my own cowardice. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, his hand still resting on mine, like he was anchoring me. "I know it's not easy," he said. "I've been there. Hiding who you are, it eats you alive. But I'm done hiding, Caleb. I've been done for a while." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "You're saying you're gay?" He gave a small, bitter laugh. "Yeah, took me a long time to say it out loud, but I'm not ashamed of it anymore. Not even if this town thinks I should be." The words hit me like a punch. Ethan, the guy who'd been at every family barbecue, who'd helped Jake rebuild that old motorcycle in our garage, who'd always seemed so untouchable, he was out. He was brave, and I was sitting here, terrified of what it meant to want him. "How do you do it?" I asked, my voice barely audible. How do you just be okay with it? He shrugged, but there was a weight to it, like he was carrying years of pain he didn't want to show. You don't at first. You lose people, friends, family, whatever. But then you realize the ones who matter stick around. And the ones who don't, they weren't worth keeping. I thought about Jake, about my parents, about the life I'd been trying to fit into like a puzzle piece that didn't quite belong. If I let this happen, if I let myself feel what I was feeling, would I lose them? Would they look at me like I was a stranger? The thought made my chest ache, but the alternative, pushing Ethan away, pretending this night never happened, was worse. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, my voice raw. I'm not like you. I'm not brave. Ethan's eyes softened, and he squeezed my hand, just enough to make my heart stutter. You don't have to be brave right now, he said. You just have to be honest. With yourself, at least. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to lean into him again, to let the world fall away like it had in that kiss. But the fear was still there, clawing at me, whispering that this was a line I couldn't uncross. So instead, I pulled my hand away and started the car. Let's get you home, I said, my voice flat, like I was shutting a door. Ethan didn't argue. He just nodded and leaned back, staring out the window as we drove the last few blocks to his apartment. When we pulled up, he hesitated, his hand on the door handle. Caleb, he said, turning to me, if you change your mind, you know where to find me. And then he was gone, disappearing into the dark stairwell of his building. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, my hands shaking. I'd kissed him. I felt something real, something I couldn't unfeel. And now I had to decide what to do with it. The next few days were a blur. I avoided Jake, avoided the living room where he and his friends usually hung out. I buried myself in job applications, but every time I tried to focus, my mind drifted back to Ethan, his voice, his touch, the way he'd looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. It was torture, and I hated myself for it. On the third day, Jake cornered me in the kitchen. What's up with you, man? He asked, cracking open a soda. You've been weird since you gave Ethan that ride. My stomach dropped. Weird? Nah, just stressed. Job stuff, you know. He raised an eyebrow, not buying it. You sure? Because Ethan's been acting off too. Did something happen? I forced a laugh, but it came out wrong, too sharp. What? No, just a boring drive. He didn't say much. Jake studied me for a moment, then shrugged. Whatever. Just don't go stealing my best friend, all right? I need him for poker night. I nodded, my throat tight, and watched him walk away. Guilt gnawed at me, not just for lying to Jake, but for lying to myself. I couldn't keep pretending this didn't happen. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't want it to happen again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Ethan's words. Tell me you feel it too. By 2 a.m., I was done fighting it. I grabbed my keys and drove to his apartment, my heart pounding the whole way. When I knocked on his door, I half expected him to tell me to get lost. But when he opened it, his face lit up, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Caleb, he said, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't either, I admitted, my voice shaking. But I couldn't stay away. He closed the door behind me, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. We just sat on his couch, our shoulders brushing, and let the silence say what we couldn't. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I carved out a secret world. Stolen moments in his apartment, late-night drives to nowhere, quiet conversations under the cover of darkness. Every touch, every glance felt like a rebellion against the life I'd been living, a life that wasn't mine. But with every high came a shadow, the constant fear that someone would find out. Ethan was patient, more than I deserved. He never pushed me to tell Jake or my parents, never asked me to be braver than I was ready to be. But I could see it in his eyes sometimes, the hope that I'd take that step, that I'd choose him over the fear. And God, I wanted to. But the thought of losing my family, of seeing disappointment in their eyes, kept me tethered to silence. One night, we were lying on his couch, his head resting on my chest, the TV flickering with some movie neither of us was watching. You ever think about the future? He asked, his voice soft. like where this could go. I tensed, my fingers pausing in his hair. I try not to, I said honestly. It's easier to just be here, with you. He propped himself up on his elbow, looking down at me. But you can't live like that forever, Caleb. Hiding, I mean. It'll break you. I knew he was right, but the truth hurt too much to face. What if I tell them and they hate me? I said, my voice barely a whisper. What if I lose everything? Ethan's eyes softened, but there was a fire in them too. You won't lose me, he said. And the people who love you, the ones who really matter, they'll come around. It might take time, but they will. I wanted to believe him, but doubt was a heavy thing. My parents were good people, but they were traditional, rooted in a world where certain truths were unspoken. Jake was my best friend, but he was also the guy who'd once laughed off a gay classmate as confused. Could I really trust them to see me the same way? The next day, everything changed. Jake called me while I was at Ethan's, his voice tight with something I couldn't place. Caleb, where you at? We need to talk. My stomach sank. I'm just out. What's up? Meet me at the house. Now. He hung up before I could ask more. Ethan saw the look on my face and reached for my hand. You okay? He asked. I don't know, I said, pulling away to grab my jacket. I'll call you later. When I got home, Jake was waiting in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. My parents were there too, sitting on the couch, their faces unreadable. The air was thick with tension, and I felt like I was walking into a trap. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes hard. You tell me, Caleb, what the hell's going on with you and Ethan? My heart stopped. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, he snapped. I saw you. Last night, at his place. I went over to drop off some tools, and I saw you through the window. You two looked real cozy. My mouth went dry. I glanced at my parents, hoping for some kind of lifeline, but my mom's eyes were wet, and my dad wouldn't look at me. Jake, it's not. I started, but he cut me off. Don't lie to me, he shouted. Are you gay, Caleb? Is that what this is? Because if it is, you need to tell me right now. The room spun. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but it was never like this. Never so raw, so angry. I wanted to run, to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. So I did the only thing I could. Yeah, I said, my voice barely audible. I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stared at me like I was a stranger. My mom let out a small sob, and my dad just shook his head, his jaw tight. I felt like I was falling, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Get out, Jake said finally, his voice low and cold. I don't want you here. Jake, my mom said, her voice trembling. Don't. No, Mom, he cut her off. He's been lying to us. To me. He's been sneaking around with my best friend, and he didn't even have the guts to tell me. I wanted to explain, to tell him I was scared, that I didn't know how to say it. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I grabbed my keys and walked out, the door slamming behind me. I drove to Ethan's, my vision blurred with tears, and when he opened the door, I collapsed into his arms. They know, I said, my voice breaking. Jake saw us. They hate me. Ethan held me, his arms strong and steady. They don't hate you, he said. They're just shocked. Give them time. But time felt like a luxury I didn't have. I lost my family, my home, everything I'd known. All I had left was Ethan, and even that felt fragile, like it could slip away if I wasn't careful. The days after the fight were a haze of pain and uncertainty. I stayed at Ethan's, sleeping on his couch, trying to piece together what was left of my life. He was my anchor, but even he couldn't shield me from the fallout. My phone was silent. No calls from Jake, no texts from my parents. The silence was worse than their anger. Ethan tried to keep things light, cooking me breakfast, dragging me out for coffee, telling me stories about his own coming out. My dad didn't speak to me for 6 months, he said one morning, flipping pancakes in his tiny kitchen. But he came around. People do, when they love you. I wanted to believe him, but the ache in my chest wouldn't let me. I missed Jake's stupid jokes, my mom's hugs, my dad's quiet pride. I'd spent my whole life trying to be the son they wanted, And now I'd lost it all because of one kiss, one truth I couldn't keep buried. A week later, I got a text from my mom. "Can we talk? Just you and me." My heart leapt, but I was terrified. What if she wanted me to deny it, to go back to pretending? But I couldn't say no. I met her at a diner across town, the kind of place where the coffee was bad, but the booths felt safe. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed, but she smiled when she saw me. "Caleb," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. "I'm sorry about what happened. Jake was out of line." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "He's not wrong, though. I should have told you. I was just scared." Her grip tightened. "I know, honey, and I wish you'd felt safe enough to tell us. But this doesn't change who you are. You're still my son." Tears stung my eyes, and I looked away, afraid I'd break down. "What about Dad? And Jake?" She sighed. "Your dad's struggling. He doesn't understand, but he's trying. And Jake, he's angry, but it's not just about you. He feels betrayed by Ethan, too." I nodded, the guilt twisting deeper. I not only upended my own life, but Ethan's too. Jake had been his best friend for years, and now that was gone because of me. When I got back to Ethan's, I told him about the conversation. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "You think you'll go back home?" he asked finally. "I don't know," I said. "I want to fix things, but I don't know how. And I don't want to lose you." He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "You're not going to lose me, Caleb. But you need to figure out what you want. Not just for me, but for you." That night, I lay awake, Ethan's words echoing in my head. I wanted him, more than I'd ever wanted anything. But I also wanted my family, my home, the life I'd had before everything fell apart. Could I have both? Or was I fooling myself, thinking I could bridge two worlds that felt so far apart? The next morning, I made a decision. I drove to my parents' house, my heart pounding as I knocked on the door. Jake answered, his face hard, but he didn't slam the door in my face. "Progress, maybe." "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "So talk." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was scared you'd hate me. But I'm not sorry for who I am. And I'm not sorry about Ethan." His jaw clenched, but he didn't interrupt. So I kept going. "I love him, Jake. I don't know how it happened, but it did. And I'm not going to pretend it didn't just to make you comfortable." For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping. "You love him? My best friend? That's a lot, Caleb." "I know," I said. "And I'm not asking you to be okay with it right now. I'm just asking you to try." He looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time, I saw something soften in his eyes. "I don't hate you," he said finally. I need time." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and left before I lost my nerve. When I got back to Ethan's, I told him everything. He pulled me into a hug, his arms warm and solid. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. "You're braver than you think," he whispered. "I'm trying," I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "For you. For us." Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I moved in with Ethan, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My parents started calling again, small steps toward rebuilding what we'd lost. Jake was slower to come around, but he did, in his own way. Awkward texts at first, then a beer at the bar, just the two of us. It wasn't the same, but it was something. Ethan and I built a life together, one moment at a time. Lazy mornings in his tiny kitchen, late-night drives with the windows down, quiet promises whispered in the dark. It wasn't perfect. There were still whispers in town, sideways glances from people who didn't understand, but it was ours, and that was enough. One night, we drove back to the spot where it all began, the parking lot outside his apartment. The stars were out, just like they'd been that first night, and we sat in my car, the engine off, the world quiet around us. "Still shakes you, doesn't it?" Ethan said, his voice teasing but soft. "That night, I mean." I laughed, reaching for his hand. "Every damn day." He leaned over, kissing me softly, and I felt it again, that electric pull, that sense of coming home. "Good," he said against my lips. because I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him, at the life we were building, and I realized something. The fear, the shame, the weight of hiding, they were still there, but they were smaller now, overshadowed by something stronger. Love, yes, but also courage. The courage to be myself, to choose Ethan, to face a world that wasn't always kind. That night in the car had changed everything. It had broken me open, forced me to confront the truth I'd spent years running from. But it had also given me Ethan and a life I never thought I could have. A life where I was free. And as we sat there, hands intertwined, I knew I'd do it all again. Because some rides home are worth the risk. Some truths are worth the fight. And some loves are worth everything.